All right, welcome back to another episode of Hockey North Weekly. I'm your host, as always, Tyler Lizotte, here with the one and only Brendan Pawliw. Brendan, how are you doing today?
I'm well. It's nice to get back to the rink. Another busy one for us, but always happy to be here and fill up my weekends with people like yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's always good to be in the rink here. We had a lot of action, the U17 and U15 AAA Cougars. We're here in town, U17s hosting the Vancouver Northeast Chiefs in the CN Centre as the U15s took up house in Kin 2, hosting the Okanagan Rockets. Not an ideal weekend for the Caribou programs as the U17s lost both their games with the Chiefs, and the U15s went 0-1-1 against the Rockets.
Yeah, it was an 8-3 loss for Caribou in the U15s. They jumped out to a 2-0 lead on Saturday. Okanagan scored 8 in a row. Caribou scored one late to make the score a little bit more respectable, but obviously a tough night for the Cougars as a whole. On the Sunday game, Okanagan had the lead. Caribou came back. They were down 3-1 at one point, tied it up at 3, and then unfortunately lost in overtime to the top-ranked Rockets, who are now 19-3 on the season. So Caribou does get a point. They do rebound. They don't get a win, but it was a good rebound effort as it was. For the Caribou Cougars U17, well, it was a kind of a bowling shoe ugly of a game for both the Chiefs and the Cougars on Saturday. It only ended up in a 2-1 score for Vancouver Northeast. And then, of course, on the Sunday, Chiefs building up a 4-0 lead, a tough start, tough last first half of the first period. Cougars fight back to outscore the Chiefs 4-2 the rest of the game to make it a little bit more respectable. But in the end, hole was a little bit too steep to climb, and they go 0-2 at the CN Centre.
Yeah, I mean, for the U17s this weekend, some moments of good hockey, but unfortunately overshadowed by some sloppy play, a lot of miscommunication on the ice, and I think at this stage of the season, you're seeing a lot of frustration start to seep up for the U17 squad.
Yeah, and whether it's injuries or slow starts or some losses mounting up, it's been a grind. It's been a struggle, and sometimes that wears on the coaches and the kids. Obviously, Jason Garneau's patience level was tested over the course of the weekend. You can kind of hear it from the bench across the way, even where we were recording a couple times, and it happens. I mean, it's disappointing, but it is part of the game. Sometimes the U17s are going through it, and to a man, they need to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of running out of time here as we're not getting too far away from playoffs. And, the race is pretty tight there in that U17 division near the bottom of the standings. And right now, Caribou really needs to start putting it together and start stringing some wins heading into the next month to try and solidify a spot in the playoffs.
Shifting gears, of course, to U18, they split a weekend with the Vancouver Northeast Chiefs. A 6-3 win on Saturday was followed up by a 5-3 loss on Sunday to the Vancouver Northeast Chiefs. So they do maintain their lead over the Valley West Giants to 3 points. Valley West dropping both games to the lower-ranked Vancouver Northwest Hawks over the weekend. Valley West, of course, will be coming up to Fort St. James to play the Caribou Cougars in the Winter Classic weekend. First game, of course, the Saturday night outdoors, the Sunday game at the Fort Forum. You've got the Northern Capitals having a pair of home games. You've got the Friday night game outdoors for them against the Greater Vancouver Comets, plus the Saturday morning game out in Vanderhoof. So a fun weekend on tap. But something we have never had in Winter Classic history is the top 2 rated teams going at it at Winter Classic weekend. And, this Valley West team that's a little banged up from the Circle K Classic might have affected their performance against the Northwest Hawks, and we'll see how they rest and recuperate this upcoming week to make the longer trek up here. But a lot on the line for these two teams, especially for the Giants, who are not only looking to keep pace with the Cougars, but to even try and surpass them, as the edge is only 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a really big game, and it's a storied event now for the BC Elite Hockey League and BC Hockey having this outdoor game in Fort St. James. And, I think for the Giants heading into this, after dropping both games to the Hawks over the weekend, there's going to be a lot for that team to prove. And, for the Caribou Cougars, they had a big win there last year, and I think they're going to look to continue that streak after having a lengthy streak of losing the outdoor game at the Winter Classic. So I think it's going to be a big battle. It's a smaller ice surface there at the Ernie Sam Memorial Arena, so a lot of tight corners. There's going to be not a whole lot of ice to move on, and it's going to, in my mind, bring about a lot more physical and aggressive play. And you're going to have to react fast, and goals are going to happen quick.
Yeah, it's going to be a physical game, a grittier game. I'm not going to say a sloppier game, but it's going to be that blue-collar lunch bucket type hockey game that we often see. Last year, maybe a bit of an anomaly, part due to the Cougars, part also maybe due to the opponent they were playing last year, where Mason Lowen, 6 goals in that game last year. Of course, Lowen, a proud member of the Prince George Spruce Kings. So we've kind of seen it from both sides of the equation. It's going to be a little bit colder on the Saturday night, as it will be on the Friday night as well. We're also on the other side where it was, quite balmy and warm, where maybe the ice wasn't that great to play on. But this year, the ice should be fairly decent, as it's going to get cold at the right time in Fort St. James by Wednesday, Thursday, and then, of course, into the weekend, we'll dip into those minus double digits.
Yeah, and we were talking to Trevor Sprague over the weekend here, and, he's been back and forth from Prince George to Fort St. James pretty much for the last couple of weeks. And the ice is really good right now. It looks like it's ready to go. And as you just said, the weather looks like it's going to be heavily in our favor to get this event on the ice Friday night.
And, of course, we have the 2 outdoor games. Caps are in the Vanderhoof Arena on the Saturday morning. So that's also a mini homecoming for some of the Vanderhoof products on that team as well. We've got the Sunday morning game for the Cougars taking on the Giants in the Fort Forum at 10 a.m. So that's always an intimate atmosphere to host a game indoors. I remember when we first did the Fort St. James weekend, where we had the 2-game weekend at the Fort Forum, and that was it, no outdoor game. But it was cool because you had Marcus Allen, Lane Goodwin, Fort St. James products that were part of that team that year. And they did the hockey schools. They gave back to the minor hockey, and it was 2 convincing wins for the Cougars that year. And it just kind of evolved to this signature event where all eyes are going to be on us. You're going to have BC Hockey out there under that Hockey Canada umbrella. And it's really turned into that must-have event of the year up in the north, where you don't, this is kind of that, there's a certain uniqueness to it, and it kind of floods back to those childhood memories for a lot of these kids, even for the Valley West Giants. When you go on those outdoor rinks, whether it be in the north or the lower mainland, they kind of have all those childhood memories flood back to all the kids once they step out on the ice, not just for the game, but even for the practices and the pregame skates as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you grew up in quote unquote your home team, your home barn, that is where all your memories and your first memories, most importantly, with the game of hockey start. And when you get to come back to your community, you get to play in front of your old neighbors, your family, your friends growing up. It's something special about it, and it's really cool that here in the north, with how connected our community is around the surrounding communities around Prince George and area, that we're able to do this. We're able to get our boys to play over in front of their friends and family and get them these experiences.
Yeah, and it's just a top-notch event. I think this will be my 3rd or 4th time doing this. I think 3rd with the outdoor game, 4th overall without the outdoor game. So always a fun weekend. You have all the teams involved. You stay in nice hotel and accommodations. You have, the huge community support. You have the parents travel up, and just everyone involved, whether you're a player, parent, the media team like we are. It's just one of those special weekends. There's a lot of work behind the scenes that go into it. Trevor can attest to that as well. There's obviously some subtle intricacies on the media side as well that can be kind of taxing, but all in all, it's worth it.
It's definitely worth it. I know this is now I believe this is my 4th year going out to the Winter Classic, and I can very confidently say it is probably my favorite event of the year. You get to go to Fort St. James. Not a lot to do, but we're really busy with the event and all the games that we're covering. It's a lot quieter in those smaller communities. You get a chance to, while you're busy, you're also able to unplug a little bit, rest, rewind, and have some fun with your team, with the guys. And it's just a cool experience for bonding. And, I think that's a little bit more deeper into what this event can really be about for a lot of the players, a lot of the families, and for the fans that come to watch.
Yeah, it just certainly has that grassroots feel to it that we mentioned. So we obviously talk about that. Northern Capitals taking on the top-ranked Greater Vancouver Comets, dropping both games over the weekend. They lost by 1 on the Saturday, 3-2. They drop a 4-0 decision on the Sunday. 2 close scores. Obviously, the Saturday game, at least in terms of the scoreline, was a lot closer and a lot more respectable on the Sunday. But really, it just goes to show that this Caps team has gradually risen throughout the year since Hayden James Beer has taken over as coach. And to play 2 decent road games like that, I think it can be a momentum builder for this program, even if he didn't come out with the 2 points in either game.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much all the games that the Caps have played against the Comets this season, they've been relatively close. The score hasn't always reflected upon that. So it's really good to see how the Northern Capitals match up relatively well, given how much older and how much more experienced that Comets team is. It is still a very young team here with the Northern Capitals, but I agree that the culture has shifted in a massive way for the Northern Capitals. They just got their new locker room set up, and Hayden made that happen. He put that in motion with the city, and got some really awesome sponsors on board for that. And I think it's just really cool to see the pride and the dedication that he's putting into this program to bring it up a notch, to bring it up to that level, to inspire the girls on the team and the girls that are going to be coming in the years to come.
And I think part of that, too, is kind of being under that Caribou umbrella now for the past handful of years. And you're affiliated with the Winter Classic. You get your own dressing room. There's that expectation and that sense of professionalism, I guess you can call it, because we've kind of viewed ourselves in terms of running these AAA programs as kind of like a junior conglomerate, and there's just kind of those thought processes and expectations on how it should be run. It's just nice to see that we've been able to kind of elevate that Northern Capitals program along the years, and like you often hear, not just in hockey, but in general speak, in terms of our lives in general, it's often those little gestures that end up making the biggest difference and the biggest impacts.
Yeah, it's the little things that add up over time, right? Like, to the outside, person looking in, they might not see the difference between, having the paint on the walls of your dressing room and having maybe your logo hanging from the wall as opposed to not. But, you do a lot of these little things. And what Trevor's done with, starting with the original U18 Caribou Cougars, building it up to now, having the tiers of U18, U17, U50, and bringing the girls into the fold. And then having the AA Bobcats, U18, U15 for a while too. Everything that he's put together has been to give every player and their family, that opportunity to come in, feel something special, and have something that they can be proud about and that they can work hard for. And I really think that that's the culture that's been, I think, widely embraced and accepted up and down every single team. And year after year, the same philosophies seem to transfer.
Switching gears, we will talk about the Prince George Cougars, as well as a recap of the WHL trade deadline that has come and gone, and a not so good weekend for the Prince George Cougars, dropping both games to the Kelowna Rockets and the Kamloops Blazers, identical 6-3 scores, and not the weekend that obviously the Cougars had in mind, given the 2 big victories against the Vancouver Giants earlier in the week. And you try and put these 2 losses behind you. You got a week to prepare for a couple home weekends fairly soon, and then you got to get back at it. But this is a group that's had some success, some bumps in the road, and it hasn't been as clear sailing, and they haven't looked as dominant compared to a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a storyline all year with the Cougars where, they've had some stretches where they looked really good, and then they went through some stretches where, they started to struggle a little bit. But it just seems as the season's gone on, it's more noticeable when they're having an off night or an off stretch, right? It doesn't seem like they're, kind of like up and down. Now it's like they're either doing just all right or they're like really, really struggling right now. And I think if you're looking at it from a Cougars fan, you got to be in my mind, a little bit concerned. The deadline's just passed. Ben Wright has 3 points in 3 games, 2 goals, has looked fantastic. We're still waiting to see what Cole Perdon does for the team coming in from Red Deer. But I think overall it's a matter of seeing, are these moves enough to motivate the team and to get them on the right track heading into playoffs?
And I think, that was the right price for Ben Wright in terms of the assets given up. You had to part with a Hunter Lang to do that, along with, a first-round pick, a prospect, and, just a collection of assets. But I think that was the right move. But, as a fan and as a supporter, and I think a lot of other fans are asking this question too, well, did the organization wait too long to make a splash? And you're always going to have that second nature debate where, how close were we to getting a Caden Price or an Andrew Crystal or a Tanner Mollendijk who's from McBride, and you're always going to have a section of the fan base that are going to say, well, why did we miss out on those players? And I think it's natural to think that. And based on maybe the price that was, I guess, paid for a Price and a Mollendijk, some fans might think, well, that was a little bit more reasonable than originally thought.
Yeah, I mean, the price that we heard for a Tanner Mollendijk even a couple of months ago was a lot more than what Saskatoon brought in right into the trade deadline for Medicine Hat for him. And I think a lot of the deals that came down, the big ones, there's some players that went for, I think, a lot less than I think people would have expected, maybe a little bit less. And there's a couple of guys that, went for maybe a bit more than expected. So I think in my mind right there, it was a buyer's market. I think it was a situation this year where there was a lot of parity in the standings, a lot of teams trying to compete. But also a lot of these teams that are in the mix are like Saskatoon, where, their window in theory pretty much ended because they've moved out all of their future assets to go on a run, and so they're looking to recoup. But then you got the other teams that are like Edmonton, where they got a few good pieces and they've been really competitive, but they're still very young and they're not quite reaching their window yet. So as much as it seems like it's really close, you've got only a few select teams that were really in that position to put in their chips and make a run for it.
Yeah, and of course we see Lethbridge going for it, Medicine Hat going for it, Calgary going for it. That's going to be a really also competitive and really fun division to cover over the next couple of months into the playoffs. And it should make for some entertaining hockey, to say the least. You see Victoria making some moves. 2 players that they wanted to upgrade in terms of their overagers. 2 players that the Cougars likely wouldn't have gone after, but it does solidify their top 6. And as of this recording, we see the Royals tied neck and neck with the Cougars for that division lead.
Yeah, and I think that's what's a bit concerning for some of the Cougars fans right now is, Victoria got significantly improved in their depth charts at the deadline, and I think the Cougars still had some big holes they needed to address, and they didn't address it to what we see. So when I look at it, I mean, Victoria is a longtime rival of the Cougars at this point, and heading into playoffs, that could be a matchup where I think, if they meet in the playoffs, if you look at it, and the Cougars drop in the standings, go into the playoffs, play Victoria, and Victoria eliminates the Cougars in the playoffs. That could be a very bittersweet feeling for Cougars fans.
And we also had teams like Portland that have been on a run, that went for it, that emptied the cupboard. This isn't necessarily their year, but they were able to buy without giving up anything. And what I mean by that, they got Alex Weirmeyer from the University of Denver, who won a national championship last year as a rookie. He came to Portland before Christmas, and they got Joel Plant from the Nanaimo Clippers. Yeah. In and around that time as well. So they got 2 really effective 19-year-old players without making a trade, without giving up anything, and in a de facto way kind of bought without putting any skin in the game.
Yeah, and I mean, also to add into that conversation too, they acquired the rights to Jugno last year, this Seattle Kraken prospect, of course signed, left NCAA, came to play for Portland, was pretty crucial in their run last year in the playoffs. And as a 20-year-old, he's been electric for him this year and a staple on that blue line, and has been a really solid presence for that team, and I think a big factor to their success.
Yeah. Switching gears here, a successful weekend for the Prince George Spruce Kings. 2 big wins over the Alberni Valley Bulldogs, 4-3 in overtime on Friday, 7-4 on Saturday. Kenyon McIsaac and Brady McIsaac, 2 Alberni Valley Bulldogs from Prince George. Brief homecoming for them. Congratulations to Kenyon on his goal on Saturday in the defeat. We had the chance to speak to both Brady and Kenyon after Friday's game. We'll have those up on our social media channels within the coming days here. But Prince George, 2 big wins as they keep pace with the Clippers, who also had 2 wins. So they're still right at that, 2 points or less pace, gunning for that final playoff spot.
Yeah, I mean, the Spruce Kings are in an interesting spot right now. Of course, they lost Skogan Trott, they lost Value, and they lost Montre a little bit earlier on. But these are guys that were, point leaders on this team, older players that, you relied upon for a lot of offense. They've all gone to go play in the queue. So there's a lot of opportunity for, a lot of these younger players or secondary players who do possess a lot of potential and skill to get some more ice time and push to get to earn those minutes and stay in those roles. And I think the Spruce Kings, since those departures, plus with Kazumo Sasaki playing for Team Japan at the internationals, have looked really good.
Yeah, and they can use those departures and even some of the long-term injuries as rallying cries, because you've got Mako out. Goodbrand's been out all year due to an injury. Eden Carolan's been virtually out all year due to an injury. So you've had this forward group that's been nicked up through injuries all year. You add in the departures, as well as the additions that they've made over the past week. Nick Metelkin looked good over the weekend in his debut. They added another guy from the Null today, as well as a 3rd goaltender for the stretch run. So you're dipping into that Null pipeline, where that was kind of one of the go-to pipelines in the past. Due to the changes now, that's even more crucial now than it was just a couple of years ago. When it makes for an interesting stretch run and gives some players some added opportunities that might not have been there earlier in the year. Yeah,
and I think one of the underrated things I think people aren't really paying attention to with having a lot of these, players that are, drafted or eligible to play in the queue, jumping to go play Major Junior before they go NCAA, is I think a lot of players are going to see this as an opportunity to really earn their spots. You've got a lot of guys that they want to be in the BCHL, they want to be in this league, and with a lot of organizations really needing to, in some ways, change their identity or to change their approach to the season. Whenever there's massive changes like this, it does bring about opportunity and some excitement there for other players in the lineup, and like a lot of these players that are coming in from the Null. They get a chance to come into a better league and really make a name for themselves.
Yeah, no, also, so with that, congratulations on the Prince George Spruce Kings with its 2 wins. Of course, Brogan McNeil, a hat-trick in Saturday's 7-4 victory. An Alberni Valley player also got a hat-trick in the same game. I believe it was Terpstra that got it for them. So 2 big victories on home ice. You got the All-Star break. They're off for 10 days, and then they are back home on the 22nd against the Surrey Eagles, and they have another 8 or 9 day break before going to the island for a 3-game trip. And they will play Alberni Valley and the Clippers on that trip. So some big points up for grabs there, and kind of in a weird part of the season where you've got the All-Star break, you got a bit of a break there, and then another break after 1 more game. So we're kind of in that funny season, for lack of a better term, where you come back from Christmas, play about 10 games, play a game here, get a break, and then you play, another week break before a road trip. So Spruce Kings should be fresh. I know their momentum might be disrupted a little bit because of the awkwardness of the schedule right now, but still very much in the fight.
Yeah, they're not out of it at all. And I've seen a few more Spruce King games over the last month or so, and I mean they look good. I think for post-coaching change, having Tasink take over as the interim head coach, you're seeing a lot more energy and consistency from this group here on the Spruce Kings, and it's going to be very exciting to see where they go down the stretch here.
Shifting gears now to the KIJHL, Quesnel River Rush, Williams Lake Mustangs, now in playoff spots in 3rd and 4th in that Doug Burke's division. Williams Lake winning 2 out of 3 at home. Quesnel, I think, getting 1 road point out of their 2 road games this weekend. I think they've got 10 guys out of the lineup right now, the River Rush, but they still seem to plug away here. Very promising first seasons for both the River Rush and the Williams Lake Mustangs, and if they keep up this pace, they will have Chase out in the cold on the outside looking in for that final playoff spot in the Doug Burks. And how exciting would that be to have all 3 of those Caribou-based teams in the playoffs this year? You got 100 Mile, Williams Lake, and Quesnel, 2 of those expansion teams that relocated in the summer, and that'd be a huge feather in the cap to have both those teams have an X beside their names. I know there's still a bit of road to get to between now and then, but the future does look bright for both clubs.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it with all the change and a lot of you're trying to plant a lot of roots in a new community with the organization, and I think both Quesnel and Williams Lake have done a really good job with that, and I think you're going to see as we keep going down this stretch, as there's that jostling in the standings to solidify your spot for the playoffs, I think you're going to see that very quickly, the excitement and the energy amp up in those markets. A lot of fans, the communities are going to start to get really excited, and I think you're just going to see a lot of really good hockey feeding off of that from the teams.
Yeah, of course, no shortage of northern products on either roster in terms of the Mustangs and the River Rush. And before we get to our guest this week, senior official with the BCHL, as well as a supervisor, as well as with Prince George Minor Hockey, and Rob Connelly. Also want to send a congratulations to Dawson Creek product, Leighton Feist, formerly the Kamloops Blazers, for committing to Mount Royal University after the deadline. So congratulations, Leighton, on starting your post-secondary endeavors a bit early. Good luck with the Cougars. He's also joining a former longtime Dub player in Vaughn Waterroot, who is also now with Mount Royal. So good to see players like Leighton Feist take advantage of that WHL scholarship route with the youth sports, even though we've seen that the plethora of NCAA scholarships more in vogue since those rule changes.
Yeah, I mean, the WHL scholarship program is a really good program, and I think it's a really good benefit for these players that come choose the Western Hockey League for their development path, and to be able to have their school and education fully paid for as they move on to life after hockey.
And without any further ado, here is our guest this week on Hockey North Weekly, the one, the only, Rob Connelly. All right, welcome back to Hockey North Weekly. With me now, well-known official here around the local rinks in and around Prince George. With me is Rob Connelly, this week's guest. Rob, thank you for joining us.
Good. Pleasure to be here.
Well, Rob, you've run a lot of games here in Prince George and in and around several different leagues, whether it be the BCHL, AAA, you name it, you've done it. I guess just maybe talk about, for you, kind of being in that, I guess, supervisor role as well as an active ref. How do you try and balance the two in terms of keeping yourself as sharp as you can be, depending on what level you're reffing, as well as mentoring the younger officials to make sure that there's a strong pipeline coming up?
Yeah, so really it comes down to repetitions and how many games an official can work. So the more you work, the more comfortable you're going to be, the more situations you're going to find yourself in and having to work through. So we try to be at the rink, watching at the grassroots levels. That's where we start. And then we work with the kids. We have on-ice sessions, a couple times a month, where we go through scenarios. We go through just basic procedures, positioning, end zone positioning, face-off positioning, things like that. So the more you find yourself doing in a game, with reps comes practice. It's no different than a player, right? If you practice power play all week, you're going to be sharper on the power play that weekend. So if we practice flat puck drops during the week, or we practice working the line with our partner all week, we're going to be better on the weekend with no escape.
Do you feel like the referees, regardless of what level they are, especially in the grassroots level, they get more comfortable the more they work with the same crew, or can it change a lot more because it varies on availability?
Well, great question. So Probably they are more comfortable working with the same crew. However, we try not to have that happen too often. For me, spreading out the skill amongst our association is important, right? So if I put the best 3 kids together on the ice all the time, the not best 3 kids are going to work together, and that's not a recipe for success, in my opinion. So if we can spread out the strengths of our program, working with some of our new up and comers, everyone benefits from that, from the coaches and players and families watching, and the referees themselves having a more comfortable time on the ice. If they're not comfortable, if they're not having fun, they're not going to come back.
Yeah. As you know, there's a ref shortage everywhere in any sport. I ref lacrosse and fast pitch and softball, and you're a hockey ref for a long time. Is it harder to get kids out or to want to do this because of maybe some of the things they see going on as a fan?
Yeah, absolutely. Retention is our biggest roadblock for sure. So this year, currently we're at 93 officials with Prince Rupert Planet Hockey. Last year we had a high of 109. So a few people move away every year. Players make like AAA teams that just don't have time to ref. So our attrition works that way. We've been pretty fortunate here in Prince George to keep the majority of our core group of guys. But no doubt, like nationwide, recruitment and retention is tough. But BC Hockey's done a good job of retaining officials. Our numbers are actually up post-pandemic, which is kind of not the norm nationwide. So yeah, for some reason in BC, we're seeming to be more successful at it. But it's definitely one of our biggest challenges is retention.
Because what do you try to do as a supervisor? What are maybe some of the supervisors across the province try to do to kind of make some of those younger, inexperienced officials or those younger officials coming up to the ranks to get more comfortable and to kind of challenge themselves at those higher levels?
So for me, it's about positive reinforcement. If you go into a room, we've all seen the cliche, kicking the garbage can. As an official supervisor, if I went in the room and kicked the garbage can and told a kid how he messed up everything that he messed up, I mean, that's not going to do anything for his confidence. So if we can go in and give positive reinforcement, say, hey, listen, like, I really like this, I really like that, this was great, but also we need to work on this, or, your position here wasn't fantastic, maybe next time try doing this rather than that. And if you can go in and give them the warm and fuzzies, but also make it constructive, that to me is how you retain them. Nobody likes to be yelled at. And, in today's day and age, it's just not okay to do that. So.
You talked about having 109 last year, you're at 93 this year. Is there like a certain threshold or a sweet spot the minor hockey association likes to be at in terms of a certain number or a certain range?
You know what, I don't really know. It's kind of been in that area since I've been involved. I've been the referee chief for the past 3 seasons and involved in officiating programs with PGMHA for 6 or 7 now. So it's been around that number. 80 as a low, maybe 110 as a high. So that's average or normal for us, I would say.
Now, you ref a lot of the Spruce Kings games. You're also a linesman. I've seen you ref, various levels. Of course, you also lines the odd AAA game, of course, at various levels. What are maybe some of the subtle differences that you see in terms of maybe the style of play that you either have to look out for, either as a linesman and official, meaning, there are certain types of infractions or behaviors that you kind of focus on when you're reffing a junior game as compared to, like, say, a AAA game at the U17 or U18 level?
So rule books are different throughout all of those leagues. They all have their own supplement, they like to call it. So you're always looking for those little differences within the Hockey Canada ruling rule book. Overall is the basis point for everything. But each league has their own specific supplement. So as a referee, when you're getting into those games, you have to remind yourself what game I'm in, what league I'm doing, and have that checklist in the back of your mind at all times. I would say the higher level games, they're faster, they're bigger, they're stronger. But we know the players themselves are bigger and stronger, so they can absorb them. So, it's a difficult task to remind yourself what you're doing every night, and just basically knowing the supplements for all the leagues and putting the correct one into play each night.
gone through a lot of different experiences, whether it's playoffs, BCHL road shows, winter classics. Just maybe talk about some of those memorable experiences for you and kind of, going through those certain types of events. And those are all kind of quote unquote plum assignments that everybody strives for. And you, as I'm sure as everybody else, have gotten a few of those. What are those experiences like as an official, regardless of what age or level you're in?
So I'll tell you, my first eye-opening experience was my first BCHL playoff game. I had worked the whole season, and that in itself was exciting enough. But that first playoff game, man, I tell you, it just took it to a new level. It was crazy. Every hit was twice as hard. Every play was twice as fast. The atmosphere in the crowd was fantastic. So I was blown away at the difference between regular season to playoff hockey at that point. And then from there, like I say, I did work one with Glasgow for St. James, which was just a fantastic experience. Unfortunately for us, on that particular night, the weather wasn't exactly cooperative. The ice was rather unsafe, in my opinion, but we made it through. And then last year, I worked deep into the playoffs with BCHL and was actually fortunate enough to go to Brooks, Alberta for the Rocky Mountain Challenge and work one of those 2 games there. So the camaraderie of the guys and when you have a group of officials, at the elite level together with your officiating supervisors and the development team, it's an awesome experience.
And how much of how much of a different experience is it to kind of maybe see different players, different teams, different jersey numbers that maybe you wouldn't normally see over the course of a regular season compared to, if you're doing a game here. I mean, if you're doing, let's say, 20 to 25 Spruce Kings home games, there is a referee or a linesman, and not every team, comes to the Cold Bar when they roll through Prince George and you see, let's say, the Brooks Bandits or the Surrey Eagles. Does it kind of change your preparation a little bit? Do you have to be a little bit more hyper aware in certain scenarios?
Absolutely. So we kind of scout just like a team would scout game. Referees scout it too. We look at the stat sheets. We know who their tough guys are that lead their penalty minutes. We know who their scorers are, their points guys are. So we just have to have awareness at all times on the ice. Who's out there? What situation we're going to be in? And really, who's the next Connor Bedard to speak of? You want to be on the ice, sharing the ice with that kid that somebody makes standing challenge. And you're like, hey, I worked the games with him. And so yeah, we focus on preparation as well as the next guy. Fitness is part of it as well. So we need to be able to keep up with those guys. And that's I'm no spring chicken, so it takes a little bit more for me maybe than some of the other guys.
Yeah. How has the game gotten better or faster over time? Where do maybe some of those evolutions, for a lack of a better term, compared to what we saw in maybe the late 90s, early 2000s, where you could hook and hold a guy, penalties weren't as plentiful, and now the red line's been out, the game's been faster, 2-line pass has been taken out at most high levels. How has that kind of made your job either easier or more difficult?
Well, I mean, the one that jumps out to me and the more difficult aspect of it would be hybridizing. That's new within the last, half a dozen years. And there's so many components to that one, whether you're the back linesman or the front linesman. If you're the back guy, you're initiating the icing and then you're checking for numbers, make sure people aren't changing on you. As the front linesman, you've got to watch the race. We've got to determine who's going to win the race to the puck. It's not just a race to the dot, but a race to the actual puck. Who's going to win that race? Then we have to keep in mind if the goaltender leaves a crease or stays in a crease. So there's so many things that are going on, and that all happens in the span of a second and a half or 2 seconds. That's a huge change for us, and I think it's a fantastic improvement on the game personally. When they made the transition from touch icing to no touch icing, obviously that was a player safety thing, and I think this is a great balance between the two rules. Taking the red line out, obviously, has progressed the game offensively. Changing it so when face-offs are always in the offensive zone, coming into a power play, we're creating offense that way. So everything I think the rule makers have done is to promote offense, and I'm all for it because nobody wants to watch a 1-0 hockey game. They'd rather see that 6-5 thriller.
Now, I've asked the players this all the time in terms of like pregame routines, or it would be like specific meals or equipment or that sort of thing in terms of like just like the physical and mental preparation. What do you like to do to kind of get yourself in tune and completely focused going into a game, whether it be as a ref or a linesman, and does it change based on the level or the role that you're playing?
Well, for sure it changes. The highest level for me, BCHL, I'm at the rink 2 hours before the game. Always grab a coffee on my way. Get to the rink, set my gear up, read the stat sheet for the night, see who we've got, who's going to start. Again, like you talked about, what players I've got to watch for on the ice, whether I'm refing or lining, and know when he's on the ice, he's going to be my troublemaker, that kind of thing. A little bit less level of that for rep hockey and PGMHA. I try to be here an hour early. That's what I try to promote to all the kids. And then just have a casual conversation in the room with them, but maybe 15 minutes before the game, we're going to put our phones away. We're going to talk about what we're working on today as far as our personal goals for that game. Like, I want to be better at this. I want to work at that. How am I going to work with my partners for that? Physically, to get ready, we all bring our warm-up gear. We put it on. We go for a run. We stretch, things like that. Higher levels, we used to, at the Gold Bar, we used to play wall ball, they called it. But the Spruce Bean Stickfire wall ball were made it into a player song. So kind of lost the love there.
Do you like to have like a pregame meal? Do you like to sleep before a game? Is there anything like that?
I haven't slept in a number of years, so I'm too busy to sleep. So sleeping's out. Pre-game meal for me will be early in the day. I usually eat, 12 or 1 o'clock, and then I won't eat again before the game. We took the people crew after the game and talk about how things went and have a nice meal afterwards.
Left skate on first or right skate?
Left skate for my whole life. Left skate, absolutely.
Now, you kind of like myself, you didn't play the sport growing up that you're reffing now. I myself am a lacrosse official and do minor softball, fast pitch, that sort of thing. I never played those games, and I ref those sports now. You didn't play hockey growing up. You're more of a baseball guy and didn't, have your first hockey game until you were 19 years old, I guess. Just talk about growing up being a baseball player and then kind of getting that bug to be a hockey official.
So I grew up, born and raised in Surrey, BC. Moved to Prince George when I was 10. The friends that I made had already played hockey for 5 years, so I donned my dad's steel-toed work boots in the tennis courts and put on the goalie gear, and I was their shooter tutor, for lack of a better term there. Basically until I was 16 years old and had been fed up with getting hit by pucks and thought maybe I should try to skate myself. So picked up a used set of skates at a used sports store and kind of taught myself how to skate. I won't say I'm the best skater, but I get by. Learned on the outdoor rinks, self-taught. Joined an adult rec team when I was 19 and started playing some rec hockey there and worked my way up through the ranks. Played for the last 3 years in the rec league. And I guess I was 30, 32, something like that. Decided the rec league was short on officials. I was a board member of the rec league at the time. I still am. And just thought I'd start reffing to kind of help out, fill some holes, and had a knack for it. Really kind of fell in love with it. And that's all I want to do now is be on the ice.
What do you enjoy about it so much? Do you enjoy the on ice mentorship part of it? Do you like the camaraderie? Do you like seeing the next great players, or whether they're going to be college commits, pros, whatever? What is it about that you enjoy so much? Whereas we often hear the negative where you see an official getting yelled at by a coach or a GM. You hear of the odd confrontation at various levels, and that will turn a lot of people off. What do you enjoy about it?
I like the challenge. Every game's a challenge. I also really enjoy the camaraderie. Whether it's players and coaches and officials, I like it all. I have the benefit of having some gray in my beard, so I find the junior hockey players, tend to show me a little more respect than maybe they do some of the other younger officials because of that. And I really had, I can't think of incredibly negative experience that I've had on this. I really haven't. I've been challenged. both physically and mentally to think my way through situations, but never one that has ever given me an inkling to say I don't want to do this anymore. It's just the hockey community is fantastic, in my opinion, and I'm just grateful to be a part of it at whatever level I can.
Now, let's talk about, there was a game earlier this year where there were, I think, 4 generations of Connellys in one BCHL game. There was
Three generations.
3 generations. You, your dad, your daughter Emma,
Correct.
all kind of doing various roles in the game. Just talk about what that was like.
Well, it was incredible, actually. So I was working the lines that night. My daughter Emma, who is going to be going to school here in the fall for some sports broadcasting as well, really involved in the scorekeeping aspect of the game. She helps the Speech Games with some stats. And then my dad kind of got summoned to volunteer, if you will. They had some shortages on their off-ice officials, so he stepped up and was working the video replay and the electronic game sheet that night. So, yeah, it was great. Proud moment for me to have my daughter in the penalty box that night, run the clock, and see my dad out there as well. There's a couple of nice photos about it, and I think Kyle even mentioned something on the broadcast that night. So, super special for me. I had another incident a few years ago. My son and my 2 nephews and I all on the stripes for a U11 development game one night, where we had a mentorship weekend here at Short. So that was another big one for me. Larry Cross from BC Hockey was up, and he took a small video and a few pictures of that because my dad opened the gate for the 4 of us to go on there. So another family event for me, and my son continues to be an upcoming official, and both of them follow some footsteps.
And I guess, what do you try to teach them or mentor them on? Because obviously the younger officials, as you mentioned previously in one of your answers, sometimes they can get a little bit more flack, and maybe sometimes you get an experienced coach that maybe, for lack of a better term, run game on an official, for lack of a better term. What do you try to not only teach them, but teach some of the younger officials when they get caught up in those situations where you kind of notice that from afar, because you've seen that 1,000 times.
Absolutely. Just try to remain calm. That's the biggest thing. When we go to talk to coaches, we want to have the coaches come down to our level. When you have a coach standing on a bench, he's pointing down at you, it's very down you, it's very intimidating. So first thing we teach our officials, if you're going to go for a bench visit, make that coach come down to your level and know his first name. That's a big part of it. For any official that's coming up, when you have a game, look on the game sheet before you go out there and know that coach's name. Because if you go over to the coach and say, "Hey, Daryl," he'll catch his attention right now, and he's going to be like, "What just happened?" And it'll actually throw him off. So there's some tricks that we can have up our sleeve to handle those situations. If we can share those with our officials before they go on the ice. So at our honest sessions, we talk about that as well. Just how to handle confrontation. BC Hockey used to have a model that was you treat disrespect with extreme respect, and they kind of backed off on that now, and now we penalize disrespect through the maltreatment policy. So we're not in the game of being disrespected anymore. We're going to curb it, and we're going to discipline and handle penalties.
We were talking off air about some of the adjusted fighting rules in leagues like the BCHL. Is just the 1 fight supplement for the 2 fight supplement for the longest time. I think it was 1 under Hockey Canada for junior A for a few seasons.
Yeah.
Now it's gone to, I think, 5 now. What do you think of that subtle rule change?
There's different sides to the story, right? There's different ways to look at it. As far as like stage fights, or when you have that goon, that guy that's all he's there to do to fight, I don't think that's a great part of our game anymore. But if you have 2 guys that are battling in the corner and they decide to shed the mitts and have at her, as long as it's a good, clean, respectful fight, when we say stop, they stop. I think it's a good part of the game. It keeps everyone in check. It might, stop some of this dick work from happening. I don't think we're back in the days of Dave Semenko where he's thrown around just policing the ice so Gretzky can stay around, right? So that part's gone. I don't think, for me, when it comes to discipline and suspensions in hockey, I would rather educate as opposed to suspend. We don't want to have kids sitting at home watching the game on TV because we're not allowed to be at the rink. I think we need to educate on why we change the rules and why big hits and bad hits aren't acceptable, teach them about concussions and the dangers of that, rather than just suspend them without any education. So I think fighting kind of helps curb some of that super aggressive stick work and high hits in the game at the junior A level, of course. I mean, we'll see minor hockey and some other for sure.
You talk about new rules that come in, and sometimes there will be some, I don't want to say policy changes, but maybe some new language around a rule. And maybe you have supervisors visit all the teams saying, this is what it is, this is what it's going to look like, this is how we are likely going to call this going forward. When there's a significant rule adjustment like that, how long do you see till you see, like, say, a major progression from, let's say, from preseason to the start of the year till about close to playoffs? How long before you see maybe an extreme adjustment to maybe calling it a lot to not calling it very much later in the year?
Wow, great question. So from an official standpoint, I think we're probably on it a lot sooner than players and coaches. I would suggest that the majority of players actually still don't know what the rules are, and coaches as well, because when you go over to a seasoned coach and try to explain the penalty call why he's upset, and you say that, but the next rule is this, they look at you like you're speaking in a different language, so it's hard for them to keep up. They have so many other things to teach. I don't think the rule book's really one that they're teaching too much to their players. So the adjustment takes longer for the players. For the officials, I mean, I would say at the highest level of hockey, there should be no adjustment period. It's our job to know the rule book and how the league wants that enforced. And if you're not willing to enforce it the way they want, they're going to look past you and go to the next guy. So the learning curve is very short for officials. If I had to say, one way or another, it would be, there is no learning curve. It has to start.
What's your philosophy or your approach to in-game feedback from a player, whether it's captain, assistant captain, player maybe not wearing a letter that might have come across a situation where he got hit a certain way and he thought maybe it should have been a call and it wasn't, or there are things kind of go off the rails in a game and you get asked a question by a captain or an assistant captain saying, why is the manpower this, or what were you thinking in terms of the calls going this way or that way? How do you handle those situations?
Well, for me personally, I don't know if anyone knows me outside of the rink, but I like to talk. I'm a bit of a talker, so I'll have a conversation with anyone. But by saying that or having said that, conversation is what I want to have. I don't want to be talked to. I won't be talked to. If a player wants to come and scream at me, then he can scream at me all he wants, but he's not going to get an answer. He's not going to get an answer, and most likely he's going to get an answer. But if he comes to me in a respectful manner, whether he's got a letter on his jersey or not, I'm all ears. I want to have a conversation. I want to explain myself, because the more we understand each other, the better the game's going to go for him.
We also hear sometimes on broadcast, or sometimes we have players that say, like, Brad Marchand, who often plays the game on the edge, a lot of times goes over it, been fined, been suspended. We often hear the term, he's being closely watched or targeted by the officials. Is that a fair statement, or would you like to see the wording of that from people, whether it be in my field or fans or other hockey enthusiasts, kind of change their wording on it? And do you put more focus on players that play that style of game just based on reputation alone?
No, I don't think there's more focus on them. For me, like, when the game's being played, I'm watching the game. I'm not watching numbers. I don't watch numbers until I see an act that needs a penalty. Then I have to get that number. Extracurricular activity after the whistle might be a little bit different. Like I say, before the game, we look at the stat sheet. We know who the penalty minute guys are. We know who the reputation guys are. And when the whistle goes, it's my job to know I've got to get to it. That's my hot spot. That's where I have to go as soon as that whistle goes. As a lines person anyways, that's where I need to be. So we have to know that. That's part of our job. Absolutely. I wouldn't say we're targeting them, but we're hyper aware that they're on the ice every time they're on the ice, so that when that whistle goes, we can get there and start it happening. But during the gameplay itself, I wouldn't suggest that anyone's targeting a particular individual looking to make a call on him. that's not the spirit of the game. That's definitely not anything in my playbook or anything like that. I appreciate my officials here.
Is there as opposed of a camaraderie between officials as there is amongst the players? And do officials from all leagues, whether it be minor or BCHL, do they kind of share notes on how a certain team plays or how the last game of a certain team went? So let's say you're reffing Vernon, they're playing the Spruce Kings on Friday, and we're in West Kelowna on a Tuesday or Wednesday. Do you kind of reach out to that officiating before or share notes and kind of talk about what they saw and what maybe you could expect when they roll into town?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're a super tight knit group. We're maybe one of the tightest teams out there because it's everyone against us. So we share notes all the time. Experiences, notes, however you want to put it. Yeah, absolutely. I've got all the guys in the BCHL are in my contact list. We talk, weekly. You watch anytime there's a BCEHL game going around here in the kids centers. You look in the corner, there's going to be half a dozen officials they're watching, whether they're on the game before, the game after, or just came to watch their buddies that are out there. Like, we're a tight knit group here. It's fantastic actually, and we've actually been kind of noted from some of the BC Hawks supervisors that have come through Prince George, just how tight knit of a group we have here in town specifically. So that's something I'm proud of as a leader of the officiating group in town here, is just how tight we are as an outfit.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground in our interview. I'll ask you a couple more questions here. What is maybe what's maybe the one weirdest sequence that you've kind of been through in a game? And I think you had a recent example. We were talking off air. It was kind of the elementary school game where the Cougars filled the Copar, and you kind of had to do something you wouldn't normally see in a typical game.
Right. It was actually in Kin 1. It was a couple of years back. So I was a lines person on the game. Like you say, Kin 1's full of screaming elementary school kids. And by screaming, I mean screaming, but not at the appropriate times, just screaming. Anyways, there's a play behind the play. I'm the back lines person, and I witnessed a spear. Now, as a lines person in a game like that, any 4-minute penalty, I can report to the referee on the next stoppage. So PG bench knows that I have it. They look at me. I'm like, yeah, I got it. So now I have to report on a whistle. So the ref skates by me as the puck goes up the ice, and I say, hey, we need a whistle. We need a whistle. Doesn't quite understand, or maybe doesn't hear me, and play continues. And it continues for several minutes, 2.5, 3 minutes, something like this. And the next whistle we get is when the team scores. So instead of doing my duties as a lines person to escort them through the flyby and get the puck, I just meet the ref at the referee crease, and he kind of looks at me odd, like, what are you doing here? And I was like, hey, we have a problem. Explain the situation that we have a 4-minute spear that we have to take. Pretty blatant spear right to the groin. We're not going to overlook that one. So we got to take the goal off and award the 4-minute power play. So he's like, man, like, the coach is going to lose it. I said, yeah, absolutely. But, that's our duty out here. We got to do our job. So away we go over to the bench, talk to the coach, and the referee starts telling the coach, hey, listen, like, we got a 4-minute penalty. The goal's coming off. You're going to go on a penalty kill, and the coach loses it. So I kind of step in as an older guy, bit of a mentor out on the ice. I said, hey, coach, listen, like, you look down the bench at number 25, I'm pretty sure you'll see a guilty face. And sure enough, the coach looks down, and here's the player kind of hiding behind his stick in his gloves like this, like, don't look at me. The coach took one look at that, was like, all right, I guess you got it. So that's one of the ones that kind of, when you first see it, you're like, holy smokes, I got this 4-minute spear I got to call, which is a tough enough sell at the best of times. And then when it happens to have to call a goal off and then award a 4-minute power play the other way, it's kind of a huge game changer. But, that's just what you sign up for when you're going to do these kind of things.
Now, is a 4-minute spear, is that the only penalty infraction that you have the power to report to the ref to call? Or are there other rules or penalties in the rule book that you can go to the ref and say, hey, this is what happened, we have to call this?
So as a lines person, any 4-minute penalty or major penalty that isn't witnessed by the referee, you can suggest to him to call it. So there's no absolute you're going to call it. You suggest it to him at the next stoppage and play and explain to him why. And for the most part, the refs are going to take that your word for it. There's no reason for you to make anything up or whatever. And these are all player safety things. So anything that requires 4 minutes, spearing, butt ending, slew footing, head contact penalty that he's missed, something like that, we can suggest, or a major penalty that the referee doesn't see as well.
Yeah, so basically anything that potentially constitute as a major or match penalty,
Yeah, absolutely.
you have the authority to look at. And,
Absolutely.
and to further talk about, we're going to go on the topic of video review. BCHL has implemented it this year. Safe to say there's maybe been a little bit of growing pains here and there, but I would say for the most part it's gone fairly smooth. What's that been like to have that as maybe an added point of reference to go over goals that might be considered 50-50 on the ice? And as an official, do you kind of look at a resource like that as a hindrance or a help?
So my experience this year here in Prince George has been positive. It's worked pretty well every time we've needed it to. It's nice fail-safe for sure. Hopefully you don't find yourself going to it on a regular basis. You know, you don't want to slow the game down, momentum taken away when you score a goal, and then all of a sudden there's a 6 or 7 minute review. You know, kind of defeats the purpose of scoring a goal and momentum, so to speak. So I like it. Because at the end of the day, our philosophy is at the end of the day, we want the right call. And that's all that matters. So if the video review helps us get the right call, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, because we saw something on the Friday Spruce Kings game where on the live feed in our broadcast, and we talked about this off air, you know, we only see about 2 angles. I think you see about 3 or 4. One of the angles that we didn't see on the live feed, we thought it was maybe like a jousting push of the puck pushing the pad over the line, causing the goal, but you saw something else that was a determining factor. What was that?
So we have the above net view, and from our view on that review, we had a player come through the slot, and he went into the goalie and got the goalie on the back shoulder, which caused his right pad to come dislodged from the net, which is where the puck ended up going in. So we had an incidental contact from the offending team on the goalie, so we took the goal off. No goal, no penalty, took the face off outside.
Now, the BCHL also has a very notable NHL official, about 2,200 games as its officiating head in Brad Lazarewicz. How helpful is it to have a guy like that as a director of officiating that has a lot of street cred, that's been in every situation and manageable at the highest level, and to kind of have that open communication line? Not necessarily somebody as experienced as yourself, but also some of the younger officials that they're trying to develop. Just maybe touch on that as well.
Well, it's fantastic. But it's also dangerous because Brad's not afraid to tell you when you've done something wrong, right? And when you try to give him an excuse, he's like, I don't deal with excuses. It's a results-based business, and he wants results. So Brad's fantastic. He's open. He'll talk to anyone, anytime. You can send him video clips, bounce it off him in between periods even. Like, hey, Laz, we just had this. What do you think? And he'll get back to you right away. So invaluable asset for us to have. He sends us out weekly clips, 6 or 7 minutes every Friday morning. We get an email of the past week, some of the highlights of calls that were made or maybe not made, or situations that happened that we all need to be aware of. It's just reminders weekly of, this is our standard in the BCHL, this is how we do it, this is what we want to see, that kind of stuff. So having Brad is absolutely invaluable for us.
Yeah. You also ref a lot of the senior and rec league games here in Prince George. How are those games, I guess, different? Because you have kind of the 2 linesmen. You don't have the orange stripes as you do in the other league, but you have one guy on one end, the other ref in the other end, and it's a little bit of a slower pace depending on what level you're at. How is that kind of viewed or called a bit differently?
Well, it's different because 2 guys are responsible for 4 guys' jobs, and we can do it because, like you say, we're at a little bit slower pace. But at the end of the day, it's actually good for me because I get to be both a ref and linesman at the same time, kind of practice my craft at both levels. I get the honor of doing a lot of the higher level Rec A games, so there's some ex-junior players there and some current like senior hockey players there. Pace is good, and they're very respectful for the most part. Treat me well. I do a lot of those games with my son, actually. Sunday nights, we do two together every Sunday night, and they treat him well. It's good. It keeps me fresh, keeps my legs going. Last thing an old guy like me needs to do is sit on the couch and get stiff, because it's hard to loosen up again after that. So the more I skate, the better I feel.
Do you ever do any like Central Interior hockey league games ever?
Nope. In the current situation now, I was scheduled to go to the Quesnel to do the Koi Cup the year COVID hit. So that was going to be my big shot at senior hockey. And then a week before that tournament, everything got shut down in the province due to COVID. So I haven't actually skated a senior men's hockey game.
Well, thank you very much, Rob, for coming on the podcast and talking about everything that there is in terms of officiating and situations and that sort of thing. And before we sign off, I guess, what's your message to a younger official or a younger hockey player or somebody that's got questions or is curious about officiating? How should they go about it, and how can they, I guess, get involved and either reach out to you or somebody else?
Well, all the information's on the PGMHA website. Officiate Now. There's all the links and emails you need to get involved. If you're at the rink on the weekend, you're going to see me. So stop by and say hi, introduce yourself. I'll be happy to walk you through the steps it would take and answer any questions you might have. We've always got room in our staff for new up-and-comers, and look forward to anyone that wants to join.
All right, there you have it. That's my guest, Rob Connelly, and that's another edition of the Hockey North Weekly Podcast. Bye for now.